Hello and welcome to this week's LinkedIn Live. We're going to be talking about how to manage your cloud data today. And originally I had a guest presenter called Dimitri, but he's getting a load of work done. So one of my favorite colleagues, Anthony, has decided to join in the middle of the night on a Saturday morning from Australia. So we have to say a big welcome to Anthony, and always happy to have you and talk to you. And we're going to just basically talk about the cloud and give you some demos and just spend 30 minutes probably getting ourselves into trouble. So Anthony, say hello to everyone.
Hello, everybody. It's been a while since I've been on LinkedIn Live, and LinkedIn Live with you, David. This isn't a product strategy live. This is a more serious one. So yes, let's try and keep this cordial, keep this active, and I'll try and do right by Dimitri.
Yeah. So, yeah, obviously today we're here to talk about just essentially how you can manage your data in the cloud. And as I mentioned, like Anthony and I are going to give you a couple of little demos of what Veeam can do around that. But essentially, one of the big key things that we're finding now when we're obviously living in the cloud, and I'm wearing my AWS hoodie, so you can always figure out which is my favorite public cloud at the moment. I guess it's the one I've spent the most time in, as a choke as well. But essentially, when you think about how you're managing your data in the cloud, when you're looking at this, what are the different considerations? This is the big challenge that we're finding now is we have a lot of customers, and obviously myself and Anthony, before we joined Veeam, I worked at VMware for a long time and spent a lot of time in financial institutions. Anthony's got a big, massive service provider background. It wasn't just a case of, you just go and store your data on a particular piece of hardware and never worry about it. Now with the cloud as well, you also have to worry about all these security requirements. And what we're finding is customers are finding this a real challenge, whether it's just managing your data in your data center, or you're paying someone from a managed service provider, or you're actually having your data out in the cloud. How do you manage all these different platforms? And that's kind of where Veeam comes in. Veeam has this whole data management platform that you can manage your data, whether it's on physical, it's out in the cloud, whether you're protecting virtual machines or anything like that. And from that perspective, how you drive and manage that is critical to your business. Anthony, from your perspective, you obviously talk to a lot of customers all the time, certainly out in Asia as well. What are the big challenges they're seeing from managing their data in this kind of multi-cloud world that we're living in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously awareness and control is massive. So being aware of, not only where you're backing up to, but, how long for and the reality of the data that lives once you actually back it up. So, having control across multiple clouds is important. And a lot of the pain points that we see when we're talking to customers revolves around, help me manage this better. And, it's an interesting one for us at Veeam because we are a platform and we do have a number of, modularized products that form a platform in its entirety, right? So, if you asked us a year ago in terms of, well, let's say 12 months to 18 months ago, it would have been a totally different proposition to what we're about to show you and what we're going to talk about now. It was very much, the fact of here, use a console here, deploy this from the marketplace and have it separate. But I think everyone wants to go and have that single pane of glass. Now, the reality of that is a little bit different with us. We don't have that as such yet, but we're going to see how we're moving towards a scenario where it becomes easier to manage our data no matter where you have it. AWS, Azure, you're going to show this in Veeam Backup and Replication, and then I'm going to show it from a service provider perspective, how you take that and get awareness and control from the Veeam Service Provider console.
Yeah, and you touch on some really good points there around like all the different components, and that's something that Veeam's heavily focused on, is how you can protect your data in all these different platforms without necessarily having to go and buy multitude of products. So Veeam works in a very modular approach. So if you've just got AWS workloads, you can go and protect all those workloads with Veeam Backup for AWS. If you're just a vSphere shop, you can use Veeam Backup and Replication. If you're doing Office 365, you can go get Veeam Backup for Office 365. And then, as Anthony mentioned, like all these products are starting to tie in together to be in this centralized management as well. So you can take a modular approach, an individual approach, or a complete architecture approach and bring them all together, which is certainly an interesting way to bring it all together.
I think also, David, the key point there is that, while there might be different products, in a sense here, what we do when we bring it together and when we bring it using technology like the external repository, which I'm sure you're going to touch on, once we bring it into the Veeam backup format, the VBK format, or it sits in a Veeam repository, that data then becomes mobile. Okay, we enable the mobility and the portability of that data. That's a massive plus with Veeam over other vendors as well, because, once you get it in that backup repository, you can then recover it to any other platform. Okay, now that's just as important as having that visibility. It's the flexibility to make your workloads portable. So that's part of the story as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly true. And I'll show that in the demo in a minute, how we can actually just move and migrate workloads around. But as this is a Veeam LinkedIn Live, we always like to do our maps. And if we want to bring the map up, we can see where people are joining from. And I'm going to impress everyone with my geography here. Obviously, we've got Anthony over in Australia. You've got me in Texas, as my accent always shows. And then we've got like Morocco, Ohio, Kenya, France, Uruguay. So we've got quite a good spread of people joining today. So now what I'm going to do is switch over to my environment and just show you how Veeam Backup for Replication looks. So if we want to turn the map off, and then we can go to my environment, and then essentially what I'm going to show here is what Anthony and I have been talking about, how you manage all your data across all these different platforms. So we can see here that essentially what we've got here is all our backup jobs. So our policies defined across different platforms. And we can see that, like, I have some backup policies for Microsoft Azure, got AWS EC2, I've got some VPC backups, and I've also got some what people now call, which I still find amazing, traditional backups of vSphere and virtualization backups. I still can't believe that after 20 years of working with vSphere now that it's now called traditional. But essentially what we're showing here is that single pane of glass that Anthony touched on, how we can manage all these different policies. Now, we can see here in this Microsoft Azure one that I have these workloads all protected. So I have like a Linux VM, a unified controller. If I go into my AWS ones, we can see again different workloads that I'm protecting. Now you'll notice that I have a unified controller here as well. And as Anthony mentioned, we can easily move and migrate these workloads around. So if I dive into this, essentially what I've done is I've added into my backup infrastructure my workloads that I want to protect, so my environments. So anyone who's familiar with Veeam Backup and Replication will know that once you deploy VBR, you go and add things like a VMware vCenter, so you can manage all your vCenter virtual machines. You also have like your backup server. In the same way that we do that, we have the ability to add in public cloud. So we'll see like Veeam Backup for AWS, Veeam Backup for Microsoft Azure. We can add in like Linux and Windows agents, Hyper-V, and so on. Once we have those in place and we have that connected to our public cloud environments, all our backup jobs are created through VBR. And it's very simple. We just say, I want to go create a backup job, pick whether I want to do AWS, do I want to protect EC2, do I want to protect RDS instances? Same with Microsoft Azure. Do I want to go pick VMs and so on? What do I want to protect? Once we have all those workloads protected, we now have under backups all the different types. So we have like our snapshots. So these are snapshots that we're actually leveraging the public cloud platforms for. So we can just right click on this and say, I want to go and restore this Azure snapshot. Now, from a snapshot perspective, these are all included just in the Azure platform. And if I expand some of these, we'll see some AWS snapshots as well. So I can restore these directly from the snapshots in the public cloud directly into the same public cloud. I can pick different restore modes. So I can actually say, do I want to overwrite the existing virtual machine, or do I want to go and restore to a new location? So we'll see that this will expand and I can pick all the different regions, new instances. So I'm actually creating a new copy of that virtual machine or that instance. What you also have is what we see under what's called the external repository. Now, everything that Veeam does with its backups, and get your word right, your name right there, mate, Anthony mentioned about the mobility and how everything that we do is in this portable data format. So every backup we take, whether it's in the public cloud or on vSphere, is portable. We can go and restore that to anywhere. So with the public cloud, we have things called external repositories. So if you're protecting your AWS or your Azure instances, you can actually, or your Google instances, you can store those in object storage repositories out in the public cloud. So we see here that I've got some AWS backups. Essentially what I've done here is take some snapshots of those virtual machines and offload those out to object storage and break them down into that portable Veeam backup file, or an OVBK, an object storage Veeam backup file. We see that we have some GCP workloads here as well in a particular GCP repository. And I have the power now to just right click on these and say, how do I want to restore these? So I can do like an instant recovery to vSphere if I wanted to, where I can literally live stream this backup data from that object storage repository directly to my vSphere hosts running in my on-prem data center. I can say I want to go restore this to Microsoft Azure. So I'm actually going to say, right, okay, this AWS instance that I've got a backup of, I want to go and restore this to Microsoft Azure. And again, it's the same way. I get my subscriptions, what location do I want, what VM sizes do I want, and it gives me all the information around Microsoft Azure as well. So that's very powerful from that mobility perspective and how I can actually move and migrate my workloads around. So I'm not going to go through every step, but we can see that from that perspective, I'm able to just move my workloads and recover my workloads in other public clouds or other platforms should I need to. So maybe you need to migrate a workload to Microsoft Azure from AWS because it needs to be closer to some SQL servers that you've got running there. Or again, maybe you want to move a workload from Azure out to AWS to be closer to RDS or something like that. So it's very, very powerful. And the same with our vSphere backups. I can just expand these and I can right click and I can say, right, I want to go restore this vSphere VM that I have running on-prem out to the public cloud. Maybe I'm migrating all my workloads out to AWS or Microsoft Azure as well. So from that mobility piece, it's very powerful. And it gives us that, yeah, go on.
Dave, can I just add as well, like, so this is real, right? Like David mentioned, you know, my background working on technologies like this, pretty much all my career as David spills the coffee. There was a fanciful sort of panacea, I suppose you'd call it, or, you know, fanciful claim by a lot of vendors that this would be easy. And my experience was that when a vendor would come and say, hey, you can move your workload between X, Y, and Z without any issues, no problem. However, the reality of that was that there was always some complication, some sort of caveat. Veeam, with its portable data format, almost 100% of the time doesn't have that. It can't be underestimated what you're seeing here with the ability to move workloads that have been backed up in AWS from the marketplace with our Veeam backup for AWS, shifting it into a repository through the external repository, and then being able to right click and move it to, say, a vSphere VM or a Hyper-V VM or wherever you want to go, or restore into Azure. That's not black magic. That's actually working. And there's no conversion cost or anything like that. So it's very important to mention that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you certainly touched on a lot of good points there to kind of showcase that. So with that, I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen now, and we're going to pull up the map before we go over to Anthony. And if we pull that map up, it looks like I'm going to pull my geography skills out, and we're just going to see that we've got Brazil in there as well. So people are coming in all the time. Keep posting where you are. And now what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to Anthony's desktop, and he's going to show you a similar interface to what I was showing you around like all the different workloads that I was protecting, but from a service provider perspective. So Anthony, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, David. So what I'm going to show here is the service provider console. So what this fundamentally is, it's a free tool that we give to our service providers to basically have awareness of control over their hosting tenants. So remote Veeam backup and replication servers, agent jobs, agent management, but also more recently what we've done is we've added the ability to manage the public cloud. So what this does, what the Veeam console does, it talks to Veeam backup and replication through the APIs, and it basically then taps into all the information that you saw that David has and presents it for the service provider in a centralized fashion. So obviously the benefit here is you can connect multiple VBR servers, multiple Cloud Connect servers, which is our backup as a service and DR as a service offering, and effectively get this holistic overview of what's happening. Now, that's great from a service provider perspective, but what this also has is the ability to offer the tenants or a reseller the ability to come in and just have a look at their own patch. So David here, you can see from an overview here, we've got Hill Northern Acorns. Now that's David's company. He loves it. He loves the acorns, not the nuts, but the computers. So that's why he's got that name there. But you can see here straight away that he's got 7 protected VMs, a couple of alarms here and whatnot. So if David was to log in here, he would have a different view, right? But because I'm logged in as sort of that top level service provider, I can see everything that's happening. Now, the really cool thing here is that if I go to backup jobs, and we've got computers here, so we can see via managed by console, managed by backup server. We've got file shares. If we've got some file share backups using our NAS technology. Now, if we go to the virtual machines, like David said, traditionally with vSphere and virtualization, Hyper-V or VMware, we can see those VMs here that are being backed up. We can see the job status. We can get a warning. We can see the last time the backup job was run. We can see size of the backup jobs as well, right? So this is a really interesting way to get an overview of what's happening. All about that awareness and control that we talked about earlier, right? Now, the really cool thing here, though, is if I actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go down to David's view. So let me have a look here. Where are we going? Reseller 2. Let me bring that up here. Where are you? There we are, Northern Acorns. So you can see here that from a David perspective, if he was to log in, we can see that we've got this under management, right? So we can see the traditional VMs. However, if we flip to public clouds, we can see that David's been pretty busy trying to basically go and back up in Amazon and Azure. So if you have a look here, this correlates exactly to what David saw in his Veeam backup and replication console. Now, the great thing about this, though, is if David logged in under his own tenancy in the service provider console, he could actually allocate a help desk person, or he could allocate someone who is responsible for checking out the status of the backups to basically do some work to see where things are at, right? And we also here go in and we can also have a look at the discovery phase as well. So we can look at discovered backup servers. So it's David's backup server. And from here, we've got a number of different options that we can do. We can patch the server. We can restart it, remote boot it. Can I do that, David? Can I give it a remote boot just for the hell of it?
Yeah,
no?
Go on.
No, I don't think I will. Just you never know. But that's the power that we've got over here, right? So
we'll prove it's truly live.
I might do it later, actually. So there you go.
You can patch it for me though. Save me.
Yeah, I could patch it. I've restarted it anyway, just for laughs. But that's basically what we've got here. But I think The big thing here as well is the billing summary. So we can go in here and take a look at an invoice relative to David, and he's not actually paying me anything at the moment, which is a bit disappointing. He mustn't be under a plan. But if I go here and take a look into the usage report, and this is a live demo, so this might not come up with anything much. No, I've actually got to put you under a plan there. But basically, if I had David under a plan, we would be able to see how much this tenancy was costing us from a service provider perspective. So it really gives the service provider the ability to be able to have awareness and control, not only from a visibility point of view, seeing what actual backup jobs are happening relative to that backup server, again, across the different cloud platforms now, using those plugins that we've got, but also the ability to bill as well, which is obviously pretty important.
Yeah, and something that I really like about this as well is we talk about service providers a lot, and people tend to think of service providers as businesses that are offering like managed services to other businesses and that kind of thing. But what a lot of Veeam's customers are doing as well, certainly large enterprises, they're now discovering that they are service providers themselves internally, offering IT services out to all their different departments and so on. So from that perspective, this is really good for that as well, because you're able to then manage the actual internal costs of what it is that's actually how much it costs for IT to run their own infrastructure, and then do charge back internally and things like that. So don't look at this just from a service provider that's providing some cloud services. Think of it as well, maybe from an enterprise perspective, who is also an internal service provider.
Yeah, and I think the benefit here basically as we develop this portal and give our providers the benefit to add more services to their managed practices is, hopefully we start to get this looking into our Office 365 product. When Google Cloud, has the plugin, we can plug into that, and so on and so on. So, this is just going to become more and more powerful. And also it must be noted as well, just for those that aren't service providers out there or are consuming a service provider service, this is available for enterprises as well. There's just a few more hoops to jump through to actually get a hold of it. So if you're interested in it, for any sort of the functionality that you've seen, get in touch with your local Veeam representative to see what that's all about.
Yeah, so thanks for the kind of intro and overview of that as well. I think it's very powerful from a service provider perspective, an enterprise perspective, how you can just manage all these different environments for customers as well. So let's pull the map up again. We seem to have quite a few more people coming in. So we've got Brazil, as I mentioned, Indiana, India, New Hampshire, Poland, Hong Kong, San Diego, South Africa, Argentina. My geography is just phenomenal today. So I will say thank you to the producer in the background who typed it all out for us, because I really am not that good at geography. So, but moving on from that, kind of just as we've got a few more minutes left, just Anthony, what from your perspective would you say is the biggest challenge that customers are facing in this multi-cloud world from managing their data?
I think it's definitely sprawl. Yeah. So because it's so easy to start and provision a service on one cloud, have something on premises, have something in the service provider clouds, have something on SaaS. So it's that sprawl that is challenging, but also then the growth of data. So the fundamental, understanding that data is getting more and more critical, but it's also growing at phenomenal speeds, right? So the sprawl plus the growth, that's the hard part. So having a platform that can kind of bring it all together in a nice way is obviously gold.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree with that. And if you think about it just from a personal perspective as well, like you look at it, just how many photos you take on your iPhone, or other phones are available, of course. If you think back like 10 years ago, you'd maybe take like a few photos, even back in the early iPhone days, the photos themselves weren't as large. And now it's a case of you just constantly taking photos. Where do you store all that data, And that's just times by a million when you become a business and an enterprise, because like even the windscreen people who came and fitted a new windscreen to my car, they're taking photos of everything, and then they need to go and save that, and then that's important for them from maybe an insurance claim perspective. If the insurance company that they're out working for says, well, they're saying they didn't get that. So managing all that data and protecting it, as Anthony mentioned, in that sprawl is critical. But I'm going to go off in a slight tangent. You did mention acorns and old computers. And obviously, I still live in the 1980s. I love the fact that computers were so much fun in them days. So here is a 1980s Acorn Electron. There's actually no old parts in it. It's got a Raspberry Pi inside it.
Oh.
But I love my old mechanical keyboard, so you can always hear the noise. So I had to get that in there since we brought up the Hill Northern Acorns. Me being a northern boy from England and loving my Acorn computers. So
yeah, did I make up that name or did you? I forgot.
No, you made up the name. So Hill Northern Acorns, obviously.
There you go.
Yeah, I may live in Texas, but I'm still a northern boy from England. So, but yeah, finally, suppose we better talk professional. The one thing that I want to kind of just point out as well before we kind of start wrapping this up is Veeam. So Veeam is Veeam's virtual conference. You can see on the banners, it's a free online conference. With the way the world is still and vaccines not getting out everywhere, which is going to be a virtual conference again. It's May 25 to 26th for the Americas and EMEA, and then 26th and 27th for APJ. You'll be able to hear sessions from our CTO, Danny Allen, hear about Veeam's strategy, hear from Anton Gostev, our main product manager, who's been at Veeam since the beginning. Everyone knows Anton. You'll also hear stuff around version 11, what we're planning on doing with like the public clouds that we're talking about today with AWS, Azure, Google, Kubernetes. Anthony will be there talking about things with V11 and service providers. I'll be talking about the public cloud, and it's going to be a great conference. So please take the time to go and register for that. As I say, it's completely free, and it'll be really interesting to hear about where Veeam's going and what Veeam's doing as well. So we got like about 1 minute left. So I'm just going to put you on the spot again, Anthony, since you're our special guest star. If there's one thing that you would do tomorrow in the cloud that you have learned over your time, what would it be?
Jeez, I don't know. I probably would look to make sure that I had enough off-site copy in place and not just rely on the built-in functionality. And that's not targeting any one of the major clouds. It's just a general comment. Never trust the built-in functionality on its own. Always look for the value that you get with other products that are more purpose-built.
So always try and implement the 3-2-1 rule, no matter where you are. Yeah.
Don't trust the platform. The cloud. I used to have a saying, David. I had some T-shirts made up once. I sold 3 of them. It said, "Outages are like a-holes. Everybody has them."
Yes, I like that one. That's good. So yeah, and I'll answer that question as well, since I put you on the spot with that one. For me, the big thing that I would do tomorrow that I haven't done in the past is make sure that my security settings are always correct in the cloud. You know, the amount of times I've set the wrong firewall rules thinking, oh, it'll be fine, it's just in the cloud, you know, that always lets people down. And regardless of whether it's in the public cloud or on-prem or anything like that, the same philosophies and principles apply no matter what you're designing. So with that, we're going to say thank you. I hope you enjoyed watching this. I really appreciate you joining, Anthony. I know it's kind of middle of the night, so it's always a pleasure to have you on these things. And thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day, evening, morning, or sleep in your case.
That's where I'll be.
Thank you.